couldn't breathe on my own. I couldn't move a single muscle. Yet I could feel, think and hear everything.
It's like being buried alive, you said.
Actually, my coffin was my body. My 10-year-old daughter came to see me, and I genuinely thought it was her last visit because the brief was, Mum's going to die.
What did she notice?
She forced the hand of the hospital because they were in denial that I was conscious and I was still there. And I just spelt out 3 words and they were stand by me.
Hello, I'm Victoria Derbyshire, and this is Unbelievable Britain. If you'd like to hear more remarkable stories like the one you're about to, please do like and subscribe. Kate Allatt was a fit and healthy mum of 3 when her life changed like that. After being sent home from hospital with severe headaches, she collapsed. When she woke, she was diagnosed with locked-in syndrome, fully conscious but unable to move or speak. Defying doctors' expectations, Kate slowly relearned how to communicate, to walk, to move, and rebuild her life. 16 years on, her story is one of extraordinary determination and hope, and today she shares it with us. Kate, welcome.
I'm so pleased to see you.
I am more pleased to see you. How are you?
It's been a while. And do you know what? It's a privilege you've asked me here because I feel, I'm just so grateful that you've asked me back to tell my story. There's been a lot of years intervening. It's been since 2012.
That's when we last spoke. That was on the radio.
So I'm good. I'm all good.
Good. That is excellent to hear. I wonder if you could begin by describing for our audience what your life was like before everything changed.
I was living my best life. Without going into details, I'm a middle child, and my father was emotionally unavailable but very lovely. And so when I became a mum, I was going to do things very differently, very hands-on. And to be honest, if I ever did nothing else, being a mum was all I wanted to be.
3 gorgeous children?
Yeah. And I had 3 gorgeous children, 5, 8 and 10. And life was chaotic. I was running my own marketing business. I was working 18 hours a day because I dropped them at school myself, come up the path on the BlackBerry, and then go straight to the office and work till 3, and then pens down, laptop down, straight to school, walk them home, take them off to all their after-school activities, friends, play days, and bath time, homework, feeding, a lot. And then 9 o'clock my time, I'd pick up the laptop and redo my emails till 1 in the morning.
And as well as all that, which is enough, you had a big challenge to do with Kilimanjaro coming up.
It's ridiculous. I know, when I look back now, it's really ridiculous. For my 40th, because every big birthday had been a non-existent, non-affair. And I decided that for the first time I was going to be really selfish, and I wasn't just going to climb Kilimanjaro, the namby-pamby charity route, which is not fair either. I was going to tackle Kilimanjaro via the Western Bridge.
Right, you've got to explain what... I don't know the significance of that. Obviously, it's harder and more challenging and horrific, yeah?
Well, it's all that. All I know is that, and really all my research was that people died on it, and it was the most challenging route, and I'd need to have crampons, I need to have special ice climbing training, and really that was a huge challenge, because at the time I had 3 young children, but I ran until I was 23 weeks pregnant with Woody, my youngest. I'd shifted all the baby weights from the other 2, and I was a really fit fell runner, having started running just between lampposts. I mean, I got caught smoking at the end of the cross-country race at school, and I never was a runner, really. But I started to run to just shift the weight. I did so, and I was super fit, which is why I thought I could tackle the Western Bridge.
When did you first sense that there was something wrong with your body?
Well, I think I didn't really. I was in denial because for 2 weeks I had a headache. I never had migraines. I had a headache. That was really all I remember, to be honest. But I remember just being far too busy to be ill. I have not got the time to be ill. There's no food, there's no shopping, there's no kids' activities, there's no nothing, work, if I'm ill. So it was just a question of, it's just probably dehydration.
Right.
And if I'm honest, at the time, I never used to run with gels, which I wish I had because I could have done great times, even better times than I did. But I used to do 20 miles a week, 3 times a week, with probably a quarter of a pint of water. And
hence why you're thinking, look, this is dehydration. This is nothing major. You ended up in hospital. When you went to hospital that first time, what were you told?
Right, when I went to hospital on the Sunday, the 7th of February, 2010, it was a Sunday, and the junior doctor...
And you're what age, sorry?
39.
Yeah.
The junior doctor looked at me, obviously middle-class lady, not somebody that's got Munchausen syndrome on a Sunday that needed attention. And he just said, look, you're doing far too much. Go home and rest. That was it. Okay. And I wanted to hear that, so I didn't push back because I hadn't got time to be ill. So I went home, lay in bed for 4 hours. The headache was like a pneumatic drill. It wasn't painful. It was the noise of a pneumatic drill in my skull. It'd gone 100 times worse. So I came downstairs, managed to get on the sofa, and shouted to my husband at the time and said, "What's happening to me?" And what came out was complete gobbledygook. And he came running into the kitchen, to the lounge, where I then slid off, rigid, off the leather sofa, landed on the floor, wet myself, and proceeded to not move anything. I could hear him rushing around, him absolutely fearful. At the time, saying, thinking I'd had a fit, I think. Eventually, a paramedic came. I'm hearing all this. I couldn't move, couldn't say a word, couldn't do anything. The paramedic came, and it was hours before I got into the ambulance, and I heard my ex-husband say, what's happening to her? She's having a fit. And he goes, sorry, sir, it's much more serious than that.
You're obviously rushed to hospital, and you're in a coma.
Yeah. Well, I was put in a medically induced coma because clearly... I was very, very ill, and they didn't think I'd last the night, to be honest. They put me in a medically induced coma to reduce the swelling in my brainstem where the stroke had happened.
Right, so that's what had happened.
Yeah, and it'd taken out my whole...
A brainstem stroke is called, yeah.
And the brainstem is the control box of the body. It controls your breathing, your walking, your muscles, everything, which is why some people have brainstem strokes and they don't get locked-in syndrome, which is what I had. Because what happened, I went into a coma for 3 days to reduce the swelling. But when I emerged from the coma, I was in locked-in syndrome state. Now, that's a clinical term I hate, but I think more people know about it now. To give you an idea, it's like the end stage of motor neuron disease instantly. I couldn't breathe on my own. I couldn't move a single muscle. I could feel, think, and hear everything.
And see.
Yeah.
But you can't move anything.
I can't move anything. I can't give anybody a signal that I can understand, but I can understand everything, feel everything.
And you can't speak?
No, nothing. Right. And for a time I was considered vegetative. I can't struggle with the word, but I was not vegetative. I was minimally conscious because sometimes I wouldn't sleep at night, so I'd be sleeping in the day, and I wouldn't be very alert to tests, but I was conscious.
Okay. So you're conscious, you can't move, you can't communicate, you can hear what people are saying, you can see. What is going through your mind?
I'm shit scared. I'm sorry. I often do speeches and I equate it to being buried alive. My coffin was my body. And, it's your worst nightmare. It's your absolute worst nightmare to be in a situation where, how it would manifest, I would be in pain. I'd be turned once every 4 hours. You try sitting in one position for 5 minutes. The pain I couldn't tell anybody about because I couldn't communicate with them for 2 weeks before my best friend. I'd identified a slight flicker in my eyes that she harnessed into a blink, one flicker for no, 2 flickers for yes. But for 2 weeks, I had doctors at the bottom of my bed talking about me, doing things to me.
So no one is addressing you?
No.
Can you hear them saying that you've had a brainstem stroke? Are they using phrases like locked-in syndrome at this point? Are you hearing this?
No.
What are you hearing?
I heard it from my ex-husband who came, you've had a stroke, and I'm lying there thinking, don't be so ridiculous. Strokes happen to old people.
Right.
No, they don't. They happen to people who are unborn, babies in the womb. They have locked-in syndrome. And I saw a child who's had it at 4 years of old age. I mean, it's not age relevant. But they never used the words locked in. It was obvious I had that because, I was not able to communicate or do anything or move. But I was in ICU for 9 weeks, and all that happened in the 9 weeks was my right thumb moved 2 millimetres and my head moved 3 millimetres. That was it. That's all the functional movement. Well, it wasn't functional. That's all the movement I had. That's the only pathways that I had. Everything else. I was in insomnia. I was in absolute pain. I was dead. If I could have pulled my own life support out, because in the first 2 weeks, my family were assembled to turn off the life support machine because the verdict to the doctors were that if I wouldn't survive, but if I do survive, I won't have any quality of life. God.
And did you know that then, or did you learn that subsequently?
I learned that subsequently off my best friend.
It's like being buried alive, you said. If you're having to explain it to someone, tell me the sort of moment by moment life of somebody who has locked-in syndrome.
That's a brilliant question. My life was all routine, and there was that damn clock on the wall, the NHS round clock, grey clock, and it was bang opposite my bed. And all I had was at 6 o'clock, I was up. I wasn't up, I was in my bed. My bed was my lounge, my dining room, my kitchen, my toilet. It was my whole environment. So at 6 o'clock, they come and they give me a bed bath. And then I'd have some, because I had a peg at that point then, I'd have a bolus put down having been flushed. That would probably take about 3 minutes. And then they'd go on to...
So you're being fed through
my tummy.
Yeah.
And then they go on to suctioning my tracheotomy, which is the most grossest thing you could ever have. The noise I can't listen to. That's one of my traumas. The noise of being suctioned is horrific. But the relief of being suctioned is phenomenal because
you can't swallow?
No, you can't swallow, and you just have an accumulation of saliva.
Got you.
And it's like you feel like you're slowly drowning. So when you have this horrible procedure done, it's bittersweet because you're not drowning anymore. It's hot. In fact, one of my fears is pneumonia because that's what I had a lot of because I was horizontal. So, and then you'd be turned and repositioned on pillars, and then 4 hours later you'd have drugs, you'd have your medications, you'd be turned again, possibly changed, and another bolus put down, and then 4 hours later it would be the same. But in the meantime, I'm bored, bored rigid. I had a television on my bed and no one put it on for me. There was no stimulation. One of the funniest stories was my mum did decide that I needed some entertainment and decided to bring me in her iPod and put the earphones on me, which I couldn't remove if I didn't like it, basically. And so what happened was she left meeting me, visited me, leaving me with 3 hours of traditional country and western music, and I couldn't take it off. But just so to help you with the understanding, I was in ICU for 9 weeks. I had nothing movement really. It was really passive therapy. All I was getting just to stop my muscles seizing up. I went to rehab because of a friend of a friend, luckily, and then and this is the most important point. For the first 6 weeks in rehab, I was I really lost the will to live big time. My days were spent wheeled into the reading room where a volunteer was very kind that they voluntarily read to all the patients like me. It was a bit of stimulation. And the other stimulation I had was with that 2 millimetres of movement in my neck, I have a helmet on my head with a probe on it that would break a laser that would play a piano if I moved my head. And I really thought to myself, really, has my life come to this, you know?
Let's talk more about this flicker of your eyelid that your friend noticed. What did she notice? Who did she say something to, and what did she say?
No, well, I can tell you exactly what she did. And she forced the hand of the hospital because they were in denial that I was conscious and I was still there. She you know, she was maybe in denial herself, but she believed always that I was still in there, despite what the doctors were saying. And one day, a tear rolled down my eye. And so she looked at my eye. At the same time, noticed a little flicker and said to me, Kate, can you hear me? I know you can hear me. Try and make that move again.
Wow.
And then I did. It was one flicker and then it fatigued, because that's the trouble with Lockton. You know, you might do 3 flickers and then
you're exhausted.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And then you think you just made it up in your head because you want it that badly. But the next day she came to visit me. She came with 2 pieces of paper, one with the stick man and one with a piece of paper with letters A to Z on. And she said, Kate, I've got this amazing idea. Don't fall asleep on me, because I used to pretend to be asleep with people. I didn't want to see anybody. I was a booger. And so she said, I'm going to point to a letter and I'm going to find out once and for all what you're feeling and what you need. Do you understand? And I slightly moved this letter. And so what happened then was she got a piece of paper. She pointed at a letter. What do you want to say to me? And you don't say please and thank you in that situation. No. It's
otherwise
straight
it will take a long
to
time.
one word. Yeah. So we went from A, she pointed all the way to S. And I slightly blinked. It wasn't a blink, but it was a flutter once, all the way to S. She wrote it down. Went back to A. Went all the way to L, fluttered twice, wrote it down. Now, that sounds quick, but that took about 20 minutes just to do 2 letters. Then back to A. I was exhausted, fluttered all the way once to E, where I fluttered twice. And thankfully, she said, sleep. And I fluttered twice. And she said, what? Can't sleep. Fluttered twice. And she said, at night. Fluttered twice. And then 3 letters. And then all of a sudden, in that moment, I was still paralysed totally, but I was unlocked from this imaginary world I was existing in. You know, someone understood me. It was like the birth of your children, all the Christmases you've ever had times a billion. It was amazing. Exhausting, but amazing.
Yeah. What was it like for her when you were able to spell out this?
I've never seen Alison smile so broadly and so I have to say, and I've always said, you know, she's been was then a huge rock. She's such a caring friend, and she always thinks and tries to figure a way around it. And as a result of her pushing it the way she did, I was then moved on to a colour-coded letterboard, which made it a lot easier to communicate. That they put instructions over my head to say, she understands, this is how you communicate with Kate.
So you're unlocked. Are you? Tell me what else you're thinking. Are you thinking, okay, I can go further. This might go further. Are you thinking, that's it, but at least I can communicate with my eyelids, or none of those things?
A whole range of things. From the pain was excruciating. The boredom. I mean, how are people supposed to get better in hospital? The amount of food. I'd gone in 8.5 stone, so I was a huge marathon runner, and I was wet through 8.5 stone, and I'd already lost a stone. How do you get better when you haven't got the energy in your body? Who was feeding me and who was giving me the energy I needed to heal, to try and rewire my brain, which is the whole neuroplasticity effect. The boredom, obviously, the biggie, the separation anxiety was off the scale.
From your kids?
5, 8 and 10, and Alison and all the people used to come and I do address this, but they used to come and to be fair to them, it's like, what do you say one way? You're having a one-way conversation. with somebody. So you're telling them things. Oh, I'll tell you about the kids. I'll tell you what they're doing. I'll tell you what we're doing at home. I only wanted to know that my 3 kids were eating. They were okay, and that was it. I did not want to know what I was missing. I did not want to know that they were all at Pizza Express having pizza, or they'd gone to the cinema, or they were going on holiday, or they were doing this or the other. I wanted to know they were safe and they were eating. And someone was there for them, giving them the hugs I would have given them. And the only way I could get the message across to everybody who came to visit me was by pretending to be asleep. It was a really good trick, actually. It worked with doctors and nurses, if they wanted to do procedures, but especially people who didn't really want to visit you and ogle or sit and cry for an hour because they just couldn't cope with the fact that their friend was. No, how helpful is that to me? I'm sorry, it's not. So I'll just pretend to be asleep. And by pretending to be asleep, and Alison would come on our dinner hour. She came every day, and it was mean. But after 3 visits, she got the message. Are you doing this because I'm talking about the kids? Big flutter.
I can't imagine, it's unimaginable for most people watching, what your primary school age children are going through when they're coming to see you in the intensive care unit. I mean, that is just trauma for those kids.
I can't tell you, we use the word bittersweet, but, to want to see your children, then for them to see you like that, it was horrific. And I'll always remember the first time, it was 2 weeks after I'd gone into hospital in intensive care. And India, my 10-year-old daughter, came to see me with Alison, with Grandma outside. And she'd been briefed that just talk to Mummy, tell her what you're doing, tell her what you're doing at hockey, tell her what you're doing with your friends. She's able to listen. She just can't reply. Don't get upset. She's listening. She's wanting to hear. And she came in with Alison and she sat by me, and her instinctive moment was to come on my bed and give me a hug. But she couldn't get past all the tubes and the machines, the life support machine. And just as she was about to climb away through onto the bed, the health and safety nurse from the ward came running in and stopped her, which I thought, it was apparently infection control. She could have taken her shoes off. But I just thought it was ultimate cruelty to me, because I couldn't put my arms around her and hug her and tell her anything and reassure her. And she sat next to me for about 10 minutes, and I genuinely thought it was her last visit, because the brief was, Mum's going to die. That's how it felt to me. And obviously I listened to everything, and she was brilliant at recalling everything that went going on at school and in her life. But in that moment, the roles were reversed, and she was the parent and I was the baby. And then she left after about 10 minutes because it was very intense, and walked out to Grandma, and then threw up everywhere outside with the shock of it all.
Because that is just stress for a 10-year-old, isn't it? It really is, to see their mum in a condition like that. Absolutely awful. Do you know if the medics were thinking that was it for your physical improvement, or were you aware that people were saying, look, if she's achieved that, then maybe there's other stuff that could happen, or what was the prognosis?
Well, I can explain that in that review. My favourite nurse, Oliver, came in my room one day, and I'd gone from one-to-one nursing to being one of 27 on a rehab board without the ability to use the nurse call button. I was shit scared again, because how could I tell them that my nappy was full? How could I tell them that I was in pain? How could I tell them that I was bored or lonely or upset? I couldn't use any button. I had no control over my environment. So when you've gone from one-to-one nursing to one of 27, all I used to do is sit and stare at the nurse's station computer, hoping that a nurse would somehow break my eye gaze and realise I needed something. It was honestly the most stressful, traumatic thing. And anyway, this one day, Oliver came in my room and he said, Kate, it's really good news. You've got a review. And I just thought, wow, brilliant.
What does that mean?
Well, that's what I thought. He didn't say anything else. But my assumption was, whoa, this is where they're going to start ramping up my therapy. I'm a fit, fell woman who, is very motivated and got 3 young kids, biggest motivation of all. Yeah. This is brilliant. So next day, I was going in a meeting with my ex, my best mate, the whole multidisciplinary team looking after me.
All the experts, essentially.
Speech and language
experts,
nursing of it. So what happened is, and I was like, brilliant, I'm there. Went in the room, and in my first book, Running Free, I do call him Ming the Merciless, because he was. And he had his own special chair in this particular room. The staff used to call it a throne. I used to get all the lowdown on him.
This is a consultant.
Yes, this is a consultant, rehabilitation consultant. And he goes, to everybody assemble, thank you all for coming. I've nothing more to add.
What?
Yeah, this is really hurtful. This has really hurt me. And so...
And you're there,
I'm
you can hear that.
And I'm gone there thinking they're going to ramp everything up. And then, gets better, and then next to me was the occupational therapist. No change there. Next to the occupational therapist was a speech and language coach. No change there. Next to them, there's a nurse, staff nurse. No change there. And then the neurophysio, just a few flickers you can't see in the shoulder. And then the best one, the neuropsychologist said, we think she's a bit depressed. To which I thought, no shit, Sherlock. But and then going back to the rehab consultant, and he said, okay, well, thanks all for that. So we need to now be discussing discharge to a nursing care home.
Oh, God. What are you thinking at this point when you hear this?
I then had to be, my trachea started blowing. It blew off. They call it a pop-off, which is very dangerous because I couldn't breathe. Blew off. I had to be removed from the room, hoisted back in a big blue hoist into my bed, and that letter board, and this famous words, Alison was there because she was really distressed. She could see how distressed I was, and she got the board and she said, Kate, what's going on? And I just spelt out 3 words, and they were stand by me.
Oh.
Because at that moment, they'd written me off. But that was a turning point. I've got a cold shiver all over me. Because with my middle child mentality, my sort of being a bit invisible and not really worth very much to during my upbringing, that's how I felt. I've always had to prove myself, prove my worth. I was never just enough, overachieve. And but for my personality, when I was at 13, I was told I was going to work in a factory just because I was a clown at school. I wasn't stupid. That inspired me to go and do A-levels and get a degree.
Yeah.
So you can see where that's my mentality.
Yeah.
So being written off there was, they didn't do it on deliberately, but that was the best thing they could have done. Because I woke up the next day and I just thought, F you, I'm sorry. You've written off the wrong person here. I've got to get home to my kids. They're 5, 8 and 10. And I'm going to do everything. So that was the moment all I could do was, I'm a marketeer. I didn't know anything about medicine at this point and neuroplasticity. All I thought was, if I stare enough at that thumb and in my head say, move, damn you, just bloody well move, eventually that might move, that might make a connection. And do you know what? It did. And I did that, and then I'd make it a bit wider. And then by making it a bit wider, I then started getting flickers in this finger. And then I'd start working on that and increasing the range and so on. And then the wrist. I mean, the first time I turned my wrist over, it was on a pillow. I then fatigued. I had no energy to turn it back over. And for 3 hours, I sat with my hands like that on a pillow because I couldn't move them. But those connections then became functional. And the same happened to my foot. And I often tell you this in my speeches. A really good example, I'll be lying in my bed on my own all day, every day. When they say do 3 lots of 10 exercises, rubbish. It's not going to do anything. I was doing, in a day, never stopping, continuously, every part of my body, from my tongue to my lips, to my diaphragm, to my legs, to my arms, everything. I probably did it 1,000 times a day. And there was some Japanese research that said the optimum amount of times is about 600. I didn't know that. I was just doing it innately, you know.
Because you were determined.
Absolutely, I was. Are you telling me I'm not going to go home to my babies? I'm never going to be a mum again. No, I'm going to dribble and they'll come to see me maybe once a week, then once a month, and then I'll just decondition and die in a care home. That's my life. No. Because once I'm out of here, that's it. I'm not going anywhere. So
did you continue to make progress then?
Yeah.
Think you could move it a little bit more, this finger, this... What, your legs?
Yeah, and do you know one of the nurses who used to come in and paint my nails? Oh, she was adorable, Kerry. She was a student nurse at the time, and she used to paint. And when she used to change my catheter and feed me, she'd always position my heels under my bottom to try and get me to bridge. So I never stopped, but I'd take one part of the body. Like, for example, I failed my video fluoroscopy once, which if you don't pass it, you can't eat.
You failed your what?
Video fluoroscopy.
What's that?
It's like it's a video of you swallowing a bolus to see whether it goes down your gullet or you aspirate.
Right.
And if obviously it goes the wrong way, then you can't eat. So you have to pass that to be able to eat. I hated being nil by mouth. 6 months of not eating. It was painstaking, but it was relentless. Yeah. But I like that because... And
at least it gave you a focus. There was something you could do
totally.
Every single day.
All day, every day.
Every moment of every day.
And it was, I'm not joking.
Yeah,
and at night, so at 7 o'clock, because what happens on a ward of 27, you take it and you have it in turns where you go to bed early. So I had to be waited to be put to bed, to be dressed in pyjamas, to be washed and everything else, catheter change. And some days you'd get to go at 7 at night, which if I've worked all day from 6 in the morning, I need to go to sleep. And some days I'd have to wait till 11:30 at night to go to bed. I was on my knees. I mean, I was so exhausted because I pushed myself so hard. So hard.
Your son, Woody, plays a big part at this time in your story. Just tell people watching what he said.
I have to say it was a huge moment in my rehabilitation and a massive turning point. And when I thought I could communicate again with the board, this was with bells on. You know, one Friday, all 3 of my children came with my ex-husband to the hospital for a visit. And at this point, I was able, with all my rehab, to hold a piece of paper to communicate with a pen. If someone held the paper, I could hold the pen and write instead of blink.
Okay. How many months have gone by?
6 months.
Okay.
And Woody came in and so innocently, and he shrugged his shoulders. Oh, Mummy, don't write my name, say my name. No one has said that to me before because they'd all expected me to be mute for the rest of my life, as I heard. And in that moment, which parent wouldn't try and, who've not seen the kids at home for 6 months, try and please them, try and do something nice for them when you couldn't even hug them or tell them you loved them? And I just went instantly, hey! I know that sounds awful, sorry listeners, but it was my attempt at Woody. And but what I didn't know then was the instant tears. Everybody in the room just started crying. Was it that bad? And then Harvey said to me, say my name, my middle child, alpha male. And he said, I went, ah! And then India and Mark, it was like, nah, you're taking the mick now. There's no way I can do that.
But is that the first noise?
Yes.
That has come from your mouth in 6 months?
Yes, in 6 months. And
that's
then
a massive moment.
I know, it was massive. It was massive. But for me, it was like, oh my God, forget the arms, forget the hands, forget the feet, forget the diaphragm. It's now all systems talking. Oh my God. So all weekend, and this is no lie at all, or Hollywood moment, I never stopped trying to move my tongue, my lips, because I couldn't lip shrunk, I couldn't move my mouth, I couldn't get my tongue to move. So all weekend, all I did, I didn't know anything about speech and language, was that. And then
you're just trying to move muscles. That's all you're trying to do. Yeah.
And then Monday morning, Oliver, my favourite nurse, came in my room in the box. And he goes, morning, Kate. And I went, oh.
Wow.
And he dropped the box. And he cried.
Aww.
And he said, it's moments like this I came into nursing.
Of course it's moments like that, isn't it?
I mean, and do you know why they were so tearful, my family? was because 3 weeks earlier on my ex-husband's mountain bike ride, the speech and language therapist has said, Mark, we'll take the trachea out, but you know Kate will never speak again.
Really? Gosh. People go into medicine to help people. You know, 99.9% of the time, medics are coming from a good place. What is your view of the people who said she's never going to, earlier on, she's not going to last through the night. She's never going to walk again. She's never going to speak again. Now, they're not doing it to be miserable and depressed and pessimistic, are they? No. That's what experience up to now is telling them. But what do you think
well, there's a huge, you've hit the nail on the head there. With locked-in syndrome, beyond motor neuron disease, the second biggest illness that doctors fear is locked-in syndrome, because even as a neurologist, they may have had maybe 2-3 cases in a whole 20-year lifestyle career. A lot of places, none. And that's why a lot of them came to me for advice and wanted me to go to the hospital where patients are.
Because you were an exception.
And I'd then gone on to do various things. But
so do you understand where those medics were coming from?
Yeah, I know, I do. I do, but my answer to this is, listen, locked-in syndrome, plenty of people do not have all good outcomes. I'm not deluded. Yeah. I'm not suggesting everyone can do me. I'm very motivated. I was very fit. I was hugely motivated by 3 children. I went into this super fit. I had everything going for me. And I had an amazing best mate who was my voice. But and I've always said this, the thing that really gets my goat is that, you know, instead of quashing hope, instead of giving false hope, which I certainly don't do. I mean, my strapline, my charity was no promises, just possibilities. And it summed everything up in that I'm not going to say, here, you're going to do what I've done, but these are the things that will help you, and then we don't know. You know, these are things that can give you the best chance of it, the best improvement. Okay. So what I'm saying the doctors should say, and I've said this at doctors' conferences.
Yeah, what should they have done in your view?
What they should have done is they should have said, I don't know about this, let's be honest. I don't know enough about this. I'll find out about it. Or I'll find out where you should go to get the best information, to get the best resources. And in the meantime, I'll do everything I can that I'm able to do on my pay grade, my resources, to help you be the best you can be. Okay. It's not about being the same as you were. I'm not the same as I ever was. I never will be. But it's about being the best version of you. Yeah. And it's about being honest and saying, I don't know, I will find out. And what I can do to help you, I'll do.
You were fit. You were young. You ran a lot. You were about to do Kilimanjaro. How does a 39-year-old have a brain stem stroke?
You know what? I've been to neurology conferences and they've seen my scans, and they said if they'd seen that scan of a patient, they would have assumed they were dead. Right. They've never seen a clot damage as substantial as mine in the pon area.
The pon area, where's that?
The pons in the back of the day, but on the basilar artery. So they were shocked, really shocked. Okay. But what I had was, instead of it took the whole width of my basilar artery out, there was a slight gap. That's where the brain is rewired, because where the clot damage was, had it been across the whole artery, curtains for me. Or if there had been a bleed and it had gone over the whole artery. Okay. But there was a tiny channel where my brain has rewired around. God. It's incredible, really.
Were they able to give you an explanation of why a 39-year-old would have a brain stem stroke, or is it just one of those things?
They just said one of those things. Okay. I'll tell you my theory. My theory was, and it goes back to the running, I was appalling at drinking, because I always used to get stitch and I never had any food. A quarter of a pint on 20 miles, not good enough. And I think over time my blood was very thick. And I put this theory to a neuroscientist, and they said there's a lot of legs in that, actually. You were super stressed, you were doing too much, you weren't, because as an amateur athlete, I hadn't got a nutritionalist and a physio advising me. You're doing what you think yourself. You know, I could eat and drink what I wanted, it was great, but I wasn't drinking enough water.
So recovery involves learning to speak again. What about learning to walk?
Oh yeah, I had to do that again.
Yeah.
I mean, it was excruciatingly hard. I can't tell you. You know, initially the physiotherapist, Emma, was dragging one on the floor while I'm walking with some support, trying to tell my brain, this is what a walking step looks like. And interestingly, when I first learned to walk again, you know, you do opposite arms and legs as you walk. I was doing the same arm and same leg. I had to literally check myself because I was... So it's
relearning.
Yeah, you're
starting
relearning
from scratch.
everything, relearning everything, walking, talking, breathing, everything. And breathing on my own. I mean, to have this out, that was a huge task in itself, the tracheotomy, you know. But it's been hard, but to the point that in hospital, in the rehab centre, they said, I pushed them harder than they pushed me.
Right.
They'd never had anyone like me. Yes, I was probably a pain in the arse, but I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be home with my kids, you know. And I used, and this is really interesting, when I could, Oliver used to let me go on his Facebook on the nurse's station computer. I used Facebook, because I'm competitive. I'm horribly middle child competitive. I used Facebook to say, I'm going to sit on a plinth for 10 minutes today. And because I'd written it on Facebook, and everybody, because they're all watching me, because I'd said it publicly, I wouldn't want,
You had to do it.
So it was my way of competing with myself. And I used social media.
So you're setting yourself tasks, but making them public.
Yeah.
So you think, right, I've
got
really got to try and do this now.
And I wouldn't do it for 10, I'd do it for half an hour.
Wow.
Bosh. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You also began writing pretty much immediately, is that fair?
Well, no, a friend of a friend was a publisher, and they discovered my story, and they just said, we need to do this, and that was the Running Free. So at the time I came out of hospital, I had no real voice. I mean, the first interview you did with me, my voice was really husky, and that was brilliant compared to what it had been. And so that was all right time, right place. I didn't know anything I was doing. The reason I did it, you think, well, why would you do that? You've just come home to your kids. I genuinely, and this is a bit morbid, I genuinely thought if I could have a brainstem stroke that almost killed me, I could have another one. So I need to know, I want my kids to know what I did to get home to them. That was my motivation. I did not believe or even think it would become a big motivational piece for people not affected by stroke, as much as it's been a global book for not just locked-in syndrome survivors and anyone affected by it, but young stroke. It's massive. People really are inspired, which is great.
How much does a catastrophic, traumatic event like that change your approach to the rest of your life?
The more people got to hear about me, the more they reached out to me, and then the more I helped them. And the more I helped people, the more I healed from my PTSD. And it became a drug. I didn't know it at the time. I just, I was giving voluntarily to people who needed me, and I had something that nobody else had. I wasn't giving false hope. I was just showing them this could help you. No promises. But and then the more people that did great things, then my confidence grew, and I became in this bubble, and my professional life and then my speaking career just went off the scale. And, and I have to share this one example because it's incredible. And this is the one that I would want on my tombstone. Christine Waddell, she's not with us anymore, sadly, but she saw me on This Morning all those years ago. And she reached out to me on Facebook using eye gaze, because that was how she communicated, because she'd been fully locked in for 17 years.
Oh, my God.
And she reached out to me.
When you say eye gaze, what do you mean specifically?
Well, used a computer, like Stephen Hawking, used a computer to communicate.
Got you.
Right? So she used that to write a Facebook post or whatever she wanted to do.
Okay.
And so she communicated through that. I mean, she emailed me This Morning and said, why, after 17 years? Oh, my God. She said, can you help me? I went to go and see her a week later in County Durham. We got on like a house on fire. I stood next to her. She talked to the computer and I responded. From that, I went to see a physiotherapist in County Durham and said, I've got a guinea pig, no money, but a lot of desire to improve. Quite why after 17 years? Are you up for the challenge? I just seen her on This Morning. Yes, just as it's you, yes. They went once a week. She was able, after 6 months, hold her own head up very heavy. She'd been in a headrest. After a year, she was able to stand.
Oh my God.
And then after 2 years, this is the thing that's mind-blowing. So 2 years would have been at 19, 20 years having had her first diagnosis. She posted a picture on Facebook of her eating the biggest piece of chocolate cake. 20 years of nil by mouth.
Wow.
She became my charity ambassador to represent the people that didn't have as good outcomes as me.
Right. So I feel like when I said, how did this change your approach to the rest of your life? I felt like, and I may be wrong, I feel like there's a but coming.
There is. There's a big but coming. The but that's coming is that my life was in two parallels. My marriage was non-existent. Being ill in hospital put the final kibosh on that. And but I had no money, no income, no career. I was stuck, truthfully, and nowhere to go. And I came from a broken family, and I didn't want to fail. I'd rather be really unhappy than fail. When in actual fact, it would have been better for my kids if I'd left, and I realise that now. But I did it for the best interest.
Yeah.
And I was stuck. But from being this hands-on mum who did everything, ran a business, and did all the children's thing, I still thought I was that woman. But if I'm really honest with myself, I have to take some, not all, because a lot of that came from the other side. Some of the blame for the fact that I don't think I was as emotionally available as I perhaps should have been for my children.
Have you said this to you?
No.
You have not said this to your children. But if you did, what would they say, do you think?
I don't know. I'll tell you why why I've not said it to them is because I've written it. And
in another book.
This book I've written that's not published, that I want to get a publisher for.
Which is fact or fiction?
It's a fictionalised drama based on my life, which is extraordinarily unbelievable, but mostly true.
Are you saying this publicly for the first time, that you are feeling some guilt for when after you got out of hospital and your physical condition is improving, it's been your kids that have motivated you to get back home out of hospital, and you're saying actually you didn't give them enough of you?
Yeah, basically. I don't think I did, but I also think I'm hard on myself. The book that's unpublished, I will say, it's called Still Mum, and it is so important that you said this, because I've never shied away from any of the mental health illness that I've had over the years, but the media's always painted me out to be this superhuman. In fact, books have been written about me as being a case study, superhuman case study. Lots of them. But I've never shied away from the fact things that, I'm not superhuman, and I talk openly, but no one wants to really listen to that. But I think my kids know enough, especially now their ages, they know enough. And
how old do they know?
27 almost, 25 and 22.
Yeah.
But for me, the reason why I've written it, and I had to be really clear about this, because in lockdown, I lost everything again. So I lost my marketing business and career in 39. I lost my charity because the trustees walked away. That was my baby, 2016. And then in 2019, when I was going through a divorce, which was horrible anyway, I lost all my speaking business in 3 days because no one had conferences. And I'm on my own. I'm shit scared. I'm sorry to swear again. But, and I was in freefall. You can't get any lower to how I got, and it was actually my daughter that didn't realise that she broke that moment. But I then had to do a lot of soul searching. I got as low as you could go, and I couldn't afford therapy, and so I looked. There was a psychologist online that really seemed to speak to me. And I started reading about self-development. I know there's thousands of books on that. I only read one book, this particular book, and it changed my life. It changed my thinking. It stopped me thinking, I'm this woman that thinks self-worth is all about overachieving, people-pleasing, and giving to others. I won't have any self-worth unless I do that. That's how I've always been, wired. And actually, my self-worth exists now just because I do. It's that simple.
It's so simple, but that is so powerful. Honestly, I bet that will resonate with so many people. Finally, we ask all our guests on Unbelievable Britain, what is the most unbelievable lesson that life has taught you?
You know, when I say in my speeches, you know, the strap line that matters most to me is that if something really matters to you, really, really, really matters to you, that's what we need to tap into, because that's the motivator. Mm-hmm. And then you try really hard, and then when you hit a brick wall and you have setbacks, you learn from them, and then you try really hard again, because that was my life in hospital and since. You'll only ever achieve. But the secret is you've got to find that thing that matters. That's the key to motivation.
Kate, thank you very, 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 very much. Thank you.
Thank you. You're a star.
So are you, blimey. And if you were inspired by this conversation, please do like and subscribe for more remarkable stories told by the people who live them. See you next time.